if their families can afford it, that kind of stuff. And then trying to keep pace with the 21 class and all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's an interesting situation, man.
What do you guys feel about that, as in seniors coming back and creating somewhat of a backlog? Because those seniors in high school might not say, hey, I'm going to go back and play my senior year of high school. They're saying, hey, like, I'm ready to get on with it. I'm ready to go to college. What kind of scenario do you guys see as that kind of unfolds, as you get a new recruiting class that's coming in, as you were expecting a graduating class to be going out, and now you have all these players and I'm sure it's a very like fine line of trying to keep everybody happy and being, everybody's lost a year playing baseball, so everybody's kind of on the same page, but being respectful of those seniors, and then also like trying to have your recruits not transfer out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the biggest thing with all of it, is it pushes everybody back a year. Like, I could speak to our program a little bit. We're going to have 22 freshmen when we start the fall, because, we had, I think, 12 last year, and we're bringing in 10 this year, that now all those guys are freshmen. That it's not a bad thing. I think the one thing that it will do is it's going to make amateur baseball really, really good for the next 4 years, whether it's Division I, Division II, junior college baseball, amateur baseball across the board is going to be really high quality baseball for the next, 5 years, until the thing kind of resets itself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you look at our senior class, and we're really happy to have a lot of those guys back, but then you look at throughout our conference, and all those other really good seniors are also coming back. So like you said, I think amateur baseball is going to be really good next year. With a lot of those freshmen, we always say the best player is going to play, but if they need a red shirt, they can red shirt. And we actually have a pretty interesting situation at Rollins where in 5 years you can get your master's. So a lot of the freshmen that don't think they're going to get a lot of playing time end up redshirting anyway. So it could be a really interesting situation, and kind of a good situation from a development standpoint for those guys.
Yeah, I think the process is just going to be super competitive, and I'm glad I'm not in these guys' shoes anymore, where I got to try and keep freshmen happy, and guys who are used to playing all the time, and now all of a sudden they get in, and there's instead of having 4.5 classes on campus at one time, you've got 5.5 maybe with red shirts. So definitely puts a lot of people in a tough position and makes for some big boy conversations pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Definitely.
for sure. I could see that like 25, 26 classes being just stacked, because you got all those guys that have like spent 5 years in college, and then all those freshmen coming up that are basically repeating their year. And I think those two classes, once we get to those in the next 4 years or whatever, is going to be really interesting to see the level of play in college baseball, because I think it's going to be like intense.
Yeah, for sure.
And one thing we often forget too is that the coaches are going to have to deal with some stuff. They're going to have to deal with some tough decisions when it comes to, I got this freshman that I had that is now, a freshman again, but does he take time away from that junior or that senior? So I think it's going to be tough, but let's go ahead and get rolling into it. Let's start off our recruiting mastermind tonight. I'm your host, Joel Hartman. I'm joined by an awesome panel here tonight. We are locked and loaded, ready to answer your questions about recruiting. We got a great piece of content for you. Before we get into it, just want to go over some breaking news from MLB. Blake Snell of the Rays captured the inaugural MLB The Show Players League Championship, which is amazing. I guess he beat Lucas Giolito from the White Sox with 3 straight victories to claim the best of 5 virtual World Series. I saw him on MLB's live stream today, and he was just kind of talking about it. He said it was great. Came out the gate excited, but then they played like 400 something games in a few weeks. He's like, just got tired real quick. But It was some good buzz. Anyway, thank you guys for joining. You're here for recruiting, not talk about video games. Before we do get started tomorrow night, I'll be with Coach Ballgame on Instagram doing some trivia tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then Tuesday night, you don't want to miss it. We're joined again by Nick Swisher for our next installment of Kicking It With Your Boy Swish. Last week, we had a few callers come in. We dove deep. We talked for over an hour. It was great. Had a blast. Had some great follow-up questions. Just a lot of good things going on. So we're excited about doing that. Swish is a former 12-year MLB vet, won the 2009 World Series with the Yankees. Now he's special advisor to Brian Cashman, the GM of the New York Yankees. So he's definitely got some knowledge on his shoulders. So when he sits down and talks and guys call in to have a conversation with him, he's really diving in and going deep. So if you'd like to be a part of that, visit prospectdugout.tv to submit your question for Nick Swisher, or to submit your question for a mastermind like tonight, for the recruiting mastermind. Next week, we're going to do a catching mastermind. So, submit your questions, get on the show and come and hang out. Don't forget to download the Prospect Dugout app, join thousands of other kids getting recruited today, upload your highlights, your stats, and all your information for college coaches like these to see your skills. Like I said, tonight's mastermind has a great panel. We're joined by my co-host, Craig Maddox. He is the co-founder of Prospect Dugout. He is also a minor league hitting coach with the San Francisco Giants. So he's definitely got some interesting points of view and perspective when it comes to the game of baseball. Spent 13 years playing professionally. I'm joined also by Ethan Gavin from Sacramento, California. He is a former D1 recruiting coordinator. And he is also the founder of keepplayingbaseball.org, which is a great resource. It's a free resource. All the information that you need when it comes to recruiting. Spend some time there. Get all your ducks in a row. Do what you need to do. He's got a great source of information for you. We're also joined by Connor Sherba from Rollins College, D2 down in Orlando, Florida. And also Riley Golding from St. Mary's College out in California. So welcome, guys. Thank you guys so much. We're going to actually jump right in. We're going to start off with a question, and then we'll come back, circle back around, and get to know you guys face to face. First off, we get a ton of questions through Instagram. Asking about recruiting. They're asking about recruiting videos. What kind of videos should I make? How should I make the video? Who should I send it to? Should I email? I mean, there's so many things going on. So I want to ask your thoughts. And Ethan, we're going to start with you. Talk to the audience a little bit about recruiting videos. What is your advice, former D1 recruiting coordinator, now with keepplayingbaseball.org? What is your advice when it comes to sending an email to a coach? What are they looking for in a recruiting video and things like that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is making sure that it's easy for them to access the video. So making sure you've got a link to a YouTube video, nothing that's password protected. Coaches get bombarded with emails. They want it to be simple, straightforward. So they're not looking for 10, 20 minutes of video, just kind of a glimpse of your skill set, the way you move, your athleticism. Definitely you want to put your strengths first. Because a lot of times coaches are going to look at the first 15, 20 seconds, 30 seconds maybe, and they're going to decide, okay, is this worth my time to watch the full 2 minutes? Do I want to watch more? So I think, social media is a good way to get it out to a wide audience. But there's no substitute for expressing direct interest. So in my opinion, I think the email, hear from a lot of coaches, emailing, make sure you have your grad year in there, contact info, no fluff, just get straight to the point, what the coaches want, and then easy access to the video, 2 minutes or less, and get straight to your good stuff.
Absolutely. So Connor, being at the D2 level, it's probably a little bit different. So talk to me a little bit about emails that you get from players. What would you like them to do differently?
To add on to that, I mean, we get dozens of emails a day, and we have to go through them quickly. I mean, we really do. So really, like you said, getting straight to the point, expressing sincere interest in our college. A lot of times we get, where it's Rollins College, and we say, and we see emails that say, we're really interested in your university. Well, we're not a university. So obviously, you haven't really done your research.
My bad.
I've had some emails that say the wrong coach's name. So just double checking, making sure you're saying the coach's name right. why you're interested in the college, and again, getting right to the point. And a tip that I can have for these guys is making themselves marketable. In college and in professional, really, we recruit in the middle of the field. We recruit catchers, middle infielders, center fielders. So, if you're a left fielder, maybe just put yourself as an outfielder. If you play second base, maybe market yourself as a middle infielder. Just something that kind of catches our eye. And again, making those videos nice and short. It doesn't need to be a Steven Spielberg edited video with dramatic background music, just kind of straight to the point, seeing the swing from the side, or if you're a pitcher, seeing it from the side and maybe taking a few ground balls, nothing too crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Riley, so when you get an email from a player with a video, what's the first thing you're expecting to see in that video?
For me, I think it's a lot of kids will take their highlights and they'll put that first, and it's 5 home run swings, and you're like, great, like those are great swings. But I think for us, it's a little bit better if it's just a round of BP, just 10 swings that some of them might not have been great swings, but we get to see how that guy maybe makes an adjustment in the middle of a 10 round BP. And I think just the raw video is the best you can do. If you're a pitcher, don't make it just the strikeout pitches you threw. It's 20 pitches and every one is strike 3. It just makes it tougher to evaluate the whole player that way. If it's a full inning and you get to watch a full inning, that may be a little bit longer video, but it's quality and you get to see everything there is to see there.
So you're kind of looking for a little bit of vulnerability as well to kind of see how they make adjustments, how they come back from a bad call from the umpire, ground ball that should have been a double play that's not.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you get a video of somebody and every swing is a home run, you go, wow, this is the best player ever. This guy never gets out.
He's unbeatable.
Yeah. What are we waiting for? We'll give him whatever he wants. But it sounds good in theory, and it is good to see the good. You want to see all that stuff, but it's also good to leave some not so good in there so we can see that too and see what that looks like and really evaluate if that's kind of what all you have to go off of.
Yeah, for sure. Craig, why don't you go ahead and add on from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think what all these guys are saying, and I got the opportunity to spend one fall as a volunteer assistant at Georgia State in Atlanta and got to really see what these guys put in. And I think what these guys hit on is the more that you can save them time, just like these guys are saying, make it short and sweet, get right to the point, give me the real, don't give me the highlight reel, give me the real, because these guys are, going to team workouts, then going to the office, then going to practice, then going to drive to look at one recruit, and they're still humans and they have families and they have a life that they need to have. So like the more that you can save them time, like I think, and these guys can add in on this, like that's going to make you more attractive as a recruit, because it's like, okay, this guy saved me a little bit of time. It wasn't the dude that gave me the sob story email, how, he did research and his great grandfather on his mom's side, went to the university and how he feels drawn to it. Like they've heard it all. Like get real with these guys and send them what they want. And these guys are on here telling you exactly what they want.
For sure. Riley, why don't you go ahead and kind of just introduce yourself, give us a quick, 30-second background on yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I coach at St. Mary's College now. We're up in Moraga, West Coast Conference. Before that, I was a volunteer at Cal State Northridge for 4 years down in the Big West Conference. Working back from there, I got into coaching right after playing. I played at University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley after going to junior college. I went to College of San Mateo out of high school, and then I went out to Texas, finished up, and I started coaching pretty much right away as a grad assistant for a year, and then I got lucky enough to be the volunteer at Northridge for 4, and now here I am. I grew up in Tracy, California, which is just south of Stockton for those who don't know, but yeah, it's kind of
that's where Ben Lopez is at, right there in Tracy. That's awesome.
Ben's a good friend of mine.
Absolutely. Connor, why don't you go ahead and give us a little rundown?
Well, grew up in Titusville, Florida, on the east coast of Florida. Out of high school, I went to Mercer University up in Georgia. Things didn't work out. I ended up going to Polk State for 2 years. And it was an awesome experience. Their junior college in the middle of the state. And then ended up at Florida Southern, played there for 2 years, got right into the coaching world, just like Riley, with Florida Southern, coached with them for 2 years. And now I'm in my fourth year at Rollins. A little bit about Rollins, Division II institution in Winter Park, Florida, very high academic in the Sunshine State Conference, which is just a really competitive conference in the state of Florida. It's almost like we win the national championship every single year. Tampa, University of Tampa, St. Leo University, Florida Southern, just to name a few.
Awesome. Ethan, why don't you go ahead and give us a little 30-second rundown of who you are?
Yeah, I grew up in Davis, California, so not too far from Riley. Played at Carleton College in Minnesota, D3 program out there. After that, spent a season in Belgium playing and a season in Australia playing. Kind of just following the seasons and chasing baseball wasn't very good, so I decided to come back. I knew I wanted to coach, so I did my grad assistant program at UC Berkeley with Coach Esker, who's now at Stanford. And then from there, went across the country to South Carolina, University of South Carolina Upstate, Division I program, kind of right place at right time. Went from the volunteer to the second assistant to the recruiting coordinator over the span of like 4 months. Chased prospects all up and down the East Coast. And in 2012, I started Keep Playing Baseball, which is a nonprofit that basically trying to help kids get honest information about the recruiting process for free.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. Thanks, guys, for joining us tonight. I'm definitely excited. Let's get into the next question. Riley, we'll go with you. What do you value more when you're recruiting a pitcher, velocity or command?
That's a really, really good question, because I think it depends on the program a lot. I think a lot of programs will tell you velocity because they may be really good at teaching command, or they might say command because they're really good at developing velocity. I wouldn't say that our program is necessarily one side or the other, but me personally, I value command more, just because I think if you can throw strikes, you can get outs. Everybody says it from the beginning of time. Pitching's about messing up timing. It's not about how hard you throw. And obviously there's something that comes with throwing 100 miles an hour that makes it really difficult to hit. But if you have no feel for the ball or have no idea where it's going, there's not a whole lot you can do with that. Now, for me, it's having multiple pitches for strikes too. At this level in college baseball, at every level, you got to be able to throw at least 2 pitches for a strike. And if you have a third or a fourth, then you got a chance to be a starter, and that's where things get real exciting. So for me, it's commanding the baseball, and then we'll worry about velocity another time.
Yeah, for sure. Connor, let me ask you a question. I'm seeing a lot of players, coaches, teams at the younger level, even into the high school level, because I've spent some time coaching at the high school level. I see a lot of pitch calling from the bench, from the coaches. And so in my opinion, that's hurting the development of the catcher. It's hurting the development of the pitcher, because they're not developing that, that feel for the game. They're not developing that understanding of how to pitch. A lot of guys at the 10U, 12-year level are just throwing fastballs because kids can't catch up to it, and they're just throwing hard. And then when they get to high school, it's like they're looking to the dugout for guidance. So when you're looking at a pitcher at a showcase or through video or whatnot, how much of their ability to understand the game and be able to call their own game, how much of that plays an impact on your opinion of them?
Yeah, I think that totally plays into the whole baseball IQ, and us as coaches, our job is to groom and to coach these players to be able to do it on their own. Groom them in practice, and then when the game comes, it's kind of their turn to kind of go out there and show their stuff. And if they get it wrong, which they're going to time after time, it's our job to coach them up and to fix it. But from a recruiting standpoint, I absolutely, if there's a guy on the mound, he knows he wants a pitch and he goes after it and he executes it, that kind of takes him to the next level.
For sure. So Ethan, do you want to touch a little bit on the difference between maybe a pitcher and a position player, and how they have to go about that process of being on the field, putting up, good numbers? Like for a pitcher, they go out and they dominate for a game, and that's going to look well. But then you got a hitter that maybe he goes 0 for 2, 0 for 3, and maybe some of those, those coaches are kind of going to a different field because maybe he didn't come out hot or whatnot. But what would you say to a high school player as a pitcher or a position player to kind of focus on learning the game and developing themselves as a player?
Yeah, I think it's hard to, if you had 100 coaches on here, there'd be a lot of similarities, but you'd also find a lot of differences, right? You'd have Riley's looking for command, another guy prefers maybe velocity. So I think rather than kind of chasing one thing or another, it's more about becoming a complete player, right? It's more about developing your baseball IQ, getting in the weight room, to make sure that you kind of have that base built for when you get to a college program, not necessarily being the strongest guy in the world, but putting in that work. That's whether you're a pitcher or a position player, just developing that baseline level of strength so that when you get to these guys, they can work their magic is super important. And then not chasing stats, right? It's really easy to look at the guy next to you and say, well, he's hitting 300, I'm hitting 400. What's that all about? He's got offers, I don't. Because a lot of times coaches aren't recruiting stats, right? Like I'm sure these guys will tell you, they go to a game and they don't care if you have 3 hits or 1 or 0. What they're looking for is skills that translate to success at their level. So does this guy have a swing, a mindset? Is he a good teammate? Is this pitcher able to execute pitches the way he wants? So a lot of it just boils down to skill development. And I think where guys get sidetracked is they stop worrying about what they have control over, right? Which is the work ethic, the intangibles, and they start focusing on things because it's hard. They're at a tough age. There's a lot of noise, and so they lose focus on what they control. So control the controllables, focus on developing into the best player you can. And these guys are really good at doing their jobs and finding players who have done that.
For sure. I see a lot of videos on Instagram lighting up the radar guns, and it seems like that's what draws all the attention. So I can understand how a player that has good velocity is going to get that initial attention and those eyes. But with that attention and with those eyes definitely comes the responsibility to know what you're doing. So a guy that comes out and he's throwing 96, he's a junior, throwing hard, touching 96, sitting 93, 94, but he goes out and it's a 4-pitch walk, and then a 6-pitch walk, and then another ball to the backstop. So it's like, I get throwing hard, get your attention, and it gets you maybe to stop walking to that next field and come take a look at what you got. But I think what these guys are saying is that beyond what that skill set that you have, whether you're a pitcher or whether you're a position player, you have to have the understanding, you have to have the knowledge of how to literally play the game, because you can go out and be the biggest and strongest player. You could be the fastest thrower on the mound, but if you can't locate your pitches, if you can't make contact on the barrel, then nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, you're not gonna fool these guys. You know what I mean? These most of these college recruiting, coaches and head coaches, like they've been around, and if you played this game for long enough, like you have the responsibility of developing baseball players. You know what to look for. So just because you send these guys a video of you chucking a ball at 94 miles an hour in the cage, they're not looking at the radar gun. They're looking at how you move. They're looking at your arm action. They're looking at, your tilt and your pull and all this stuff that has nothing to do with the radar gun. And then they'll decide if they think that they can take a chance on, molding that into a pitcher instead of just a hurler and a thrower.
I think that's exactly right, man. And this is actually kind of funny the way that you went with your response, Ethan, into my next question. Riley, do you think a single good performance, this is actually a question that we had come in from one of our audience members. Can a single good performance lead to a scholarship, or is it a more drawn out process than that?
For me, it's definitely a more drawn out process than that. A single great performance may have me come see you again, but very rarely, unless that performance is an 8 inning no hitter and I saw everything I needed to see in those 8 innings, then in that case it might lead to a scholarship. But my mind, I'm a hitting guy, so my mind went to a hitter when you said that. And if a guy goes 4 for 4 with 4 doubles, yeah, I'm probably writing his name down and probably going to see him again. But very rarely will that lead directly to scholarship. Now,
Yeah, for
obviously,
sure.
the pitching example might be one, but
Yeah.
other than that, definitely a more drawn out process. Because I mean, we want to get to know you as a kid too. You know,
Mhm.
that's a huge part of it that I wouldn't say a lot of kids forget, but I think it kind of gets lost in the Twitter videos and the Instagram videos that, yeah, this guy might be a great player, but we know nothing about him as a human being, and we got to call the coach and get to know him, get him up to
Mhm.
campus and hang out with him a little bit and get to know him and see if it's a good fit, because that's a major part of it.
For sure. Connor, I see you quite often running around town in Florida at various tournaments and whatnot and showcases. So you're stumbling across a kid that just had a good performance on the field. You stop, take a look. What's that next couple steps for you in that process with him?
With Rollins being like such a high academic institution, we got to ask the coach about grades. You know, if a guy can't even get in, there's really no sense in us wasting our time on him. And then just kind of evaluating our roster, seeing if positionally he's a fit, and then obviously if I like him athletically, he's a fit. And then kind of just taking the next steps, sending his transcripts into admissions, seeing what they come back with, and then just kind of valuing him baseball scholarship wise, which is a really hard thing to do. Obviously we're limited on our scholarships. We have about 8 scholarships.
Mhm.
So it's tough for us to value a player, but that's part of our job. So really that's about it.
For sure. Ethan, I'm gonna get back to you in a second. I want to take a quick intermission and I want to see if I can share my screen for you guys because I want to show you um, what we've got going on here at Prospect Dugout. So our reason for being around as a company circled around the question that Craig texted me or asked me was these kids are going to these showcases on the weekend, but how are they getting looked at? How are they getting exposure throughout the week when they go home? They can't spend hundreds of dollars every single weekend to go to these events. And we're hearing right now, you know, this is confirmation that one good performance might open a coach's eyes, but by no means does that seal the deal for you. So it's not like you're just going to be the diamond in the rough. You're going to go out and have one, you know, good 4-for-4 with a double and a home run and steal a couple bases. And all of a sudden, boom, I'm going D1. It's not like that. So our thought process behind it was, what can we create that's going to give an amateur baseball player an opportunity or a realistic idea of how to get himself out there? And so let me share my screen with you and show the Prospect Dugout app. Just a couple of slides from this. Can you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is the homepage. Just essentially just like Instagram, just a Prospect Dugout news feed. There's let's see, there's a couple slides of this, just essentially just kind of, you know, catching people's eyes on what they've got just in a community style setting. And then if we dive in and we go to the profile, it kind of takes you into who the player is. So we're just talking about, you know, after we have that first, you know, performance, or we have that good performance that catches the attention, we want to learn more about the player. So we got an opportunity for them to put their bio information here. There's also an opportunity for them to put their stats and their highlights, and then a little bit more information about them as a prospect. Let me show you that right down here.
Isaac's a step, by the way.
Yeah, he is over at University of Florida. So we have right down here, if you can see these check marks down here, that is how we verify these type of stats within the app. So through a confirmed source, we verified that at the time that he did this, he had exit velocity of 98, a velocity of 89, and a 60-yard dash of 6.9. So this kind of creates an opportunity for you guys as coaches and recruiting coordinators to go ahead. Let me go and search for a player, right? I need, a third baseman. I need a second baseman, whatever. Or if I want to get, a little bit more detailed and say, okay, I need a player that's got a minimum exit velocity or minimum throwing velocity of 86, runs a 6.8, right? And so I'm going to hit the search bar and it's going to come up to a list of players that we can go ahead and look through. And like I showed you here on Isaac's profile, you could see if it's verified. If it's not verified, it won't have those checks. So we've just kind of created, here's another slide, a look at a player's highlight page on his profile. So we've created an opportunity for players to really go past that single game performance. So yeah, they have that opportunity that opens people's eyes, but they might have that opportunity every weekend. And Connor, you might not be there. Riley, you may not be there. Somebody else may not be there at a college that he can go to. Just because he goes 4 for 4 with a home run and a double doesn't mean he's going D1, right? It all plays into his skill set. So I think what we have here is an opportunity for players to kind of put out their information on a consistent basis so coaches can get to know them. Coaches can look through that information. If you guys have special needs for, with the situation we have with these recruiting classes, with guys staying around for next year, kids in Florida might be staying in high school for another year. So, seniors that were graduating this year are going to redo their senior year. So they're going to come in to college a little bit older, but it's an opportunity for them to kind of track what they're doing and track everything that they're putting out there as a baseball player into one place for coaches to kind of find.
Yeah. And I think the whole point around the app, and Riley and Connor touched on it, and I'd love to get Ethan's thoughts on it as well, is that no single game performance is going to get you signed on the dotted line. What all these guys said is it's going to catch their attention, and every player has to have that moment that they catch the coach's attention. But these guys might not come out and say it, but I'll say it, like, they got to like you too. Like, they got to spend the next 4 years or 5 years of their lives with you. So that's why they're going to invite you to campus and sit down with you and be like, can I deal with this dude for the next 4 to 5 years? Because you might shove and throw 8 shutout innings on the mound, but you might be a tough human to get along with. They might pass on you just because of that. So there's so many more factors that go into getting a scholarship. Like, if a coach extends a scholarship to you at whatever percentage, that coach or that recruiting coordinator is putting their stamp on you. Like, they're putting their stamp on you that says, this guy, I believe in this guy. I believe this guy is going to help the team win. Like, they don't just, I don't know if some kids, I think this, they don't just like hand out scholarships. Like, they don't. Like, they're just like Connor's saying, there's very few scholarships that these guys have. So to even get 10%, 20%, like, that's a privilege, and it's hard to come by. So even if they're handing out 20% to you, that's because they've seen you, they like what you can do on the field, they like your fit in the university or college, and then they like you as a person. And I think that goes into it, that, they don't have to say it, but what these guys need to know is that's a big factor.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So I'd love to get Ethan's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think, like, one of the things that we talk about a lot is just, hey, you need to have a plan, right? So you need to get informed. You need to have a plan. And then it's tough to put all your eggs in one basket, right? Because maybe one of these guys, they see a player's profile that matches through the app or through wherever, and then they have the opportunity where they can follow up, right? You have the contact information, boom. So I think the more ways, everyone wants, is it travel ball or high school baseball? Should I go to a private high school or my local high school? Everyone wants these kind of black and white answers. And the truth is not, it's not a binary it's not one or the other. So I think the more opportunities you have to get yourself out there is good. Understanding that, hey, exposure is a two-way street, right? You put yourself out there and your skills aren't ready, well, that's going to be a knock against you. That might get you crossed off. So I think the biggest thing is just understanding what these guys are looking for, understanding that there's multiple ways to get where you're trying to go. And I think if you have the opportunity to put your stuff on your app, to email coaches that programs of interest, to maybe select a showcase where the coaches at the school are going to be there, or better yet, go to a camp where hey, I know these guys are going to run this camp in a way that's going to get me better as a player. So no matter what, I have that, but I'm also going to get a chance to perform in front of this coaching staff for 3 or 4 days, right? So the more, just like a stock portfolio, right? Diversifying and making sure you're not just throwing all your eggs in one basket, and making sure you're making informed decisions is super important. So yeah, I think you're really onto something there.
For sure. I'm going to stick with you right here, Ethan, on this question. Somebody actually sent this in. Is senior year too late? And so I guess the real question is, when does recruiting start?
It's not. I mean, programs at every level, they're going to lose guys to the draft. They're going to be looking to finish. So I remember signing kids when I was Division I recruiting coordinator after high school was over, right? They graduated from high school, weren't sure where they're going, and we offered scholarships to kids because recruiting's such a fluid thing. One day you're flush with shortstops, then you got an ACL, kid transfers, and all of a sudden you need a shortstop. So I think there's this push for everything to get earlier and earlier, but there's really no reason for guys to rush. If you're doing the right things, if you're developing into a better player, getting 1% better each day, you're going to be a better player, a more desirable recruit 3 months from now than you would be today if you're doing the right thing. So there's kind of this false narrative that recruiting happens early, and it's not true. And I think these guys will tell you, like, they're looking for players late in the game for a variety of reasons. And it might not be every year, and it might not be every school, but every single level is going to have, you're definitely not too late, but the later you get, you need to start having backup plans and be more aggressive in putting yourself out there.
For sure. Connor, right away, you reacted that senior year is not too late. Why don't you go ahead and touch on that?
Yeah, at the Division II level, things kind of are a little bit slower than the Division I level. Just to throw it out there, we signed 3 guys last month that are high school guys. Really, we only sign about 1, maybe 2 guys or commit one, maybe 2 guys as a junior, but really everything else happens after that. At the Division II level, we get a lot of transfers with the NCAA portal. We call it online shopping. And online shopping's been pretty good lately with this whole coronavirus going on. Guys are looking to transfer, so we've been on that quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, things are a lot slower at the Division II level. I can't really speak for the Division I level, but senior year is definitely not too late.
Riley, why don't you go ahead and hit on the D1 level?
Yeah, I mean, as our program, we have a term that we use that's late is great. And that's because we prefer to go later than most programs. And the nature of the beast is that it is going so early that it's really tough to keep up. But we prefer to recruit later. I mean, we have one 22 commit right now, and that's a special case because we knew his coach, and he's a really good shortstop, and we like him a lot. But that's about as earliest we've gone in 4 or 5 years as a coaching staff. This is our first at St. Mary's, but it's really, really hard for a kid who commits as a freshman or sophomore to keep the edge in the way that he works for the next 3 years before he arrives on campus. And there's some special kids that can do it. They can commit as a freshman and they work their butts off for 4 straight years and they show up on campus and they're dudes, but it's really, really hard when you get the scholarship offer that early to keep that edge and keep working. So for us as a program, we prefer to go as late as we can because those guys they got a chip on their shoulder. They're working hard all the way through high school and they weren't recruited maybe as much as the guy next to them, that they start developing that chip. And when they show up on campus, they're ready to work. And those are the guys that we want to be around every day.
Oh yeah, for sure. Ethan, I want to ask you, so what are some of the things that at the freshmen, let's go freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, if you were just, you were a search function right now, what are the top things per class that athletes and parents are asking? Should I be doing this now? Should I be doing this now? What should I be doing? Go through for one thing from freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I don't think they always ask the questions that they should. So I'm going to flip that around on you and give you the questions they should be asking. So
Nice.
freshman year, what do I need to do from eligibility perspective? Okay, so prepare as if you want to go to the most difficult school, which would be a Division I. And beyond that, know that just satisfying the NCAA requirements aren't going to be good enough. And the best way to get a scholarship in college baseball is to get academic money and pair that with some baseball money, because it's not a full ride sport. So don't worry about exposure or anything. So number one, freshman, it's all about academics, understanding eligibility and getting off on the right foot. Sophomore year, just develop, man. I mean, you're young and you have plenty of time. There's this huge rush to try and get recruited earlier and earlier. And a verbal commitment, it's a handshake. 25% of college coaches, head coaches will change teams over a 2 or 3 year span. So if you're committing as a sophomore, you're worried about that. Well, there's a good chance that coaching staff might not be there, especially the recruiting coordinator or some of the assistants. So develop. Junior year, again, circling back, and all of these are kind of cyclical, right? Development should be continuous throughout.
Right.
Academics should be continuous throughout. Now you get into junior year and you have to evaluate where you are as a player, right? Some guys are physically matured. Their skill set is recruitable, and now they can start to have more engagement with college coaches. But you also can't say all juniors should do this, because some guys won't be ready until, like we said, late senior year. So just develop where you are. Okay. So where am I? Where am I interested in going? And then what do I have to do to bridge that gap, right? How do I meet the standard of play for St. Mary's College?
Mm-hmm.
I go to do some roster research, right? What is Coach Moore like in a right-handed pitcher? Well, I see, and I'm just making this up, but I see that he likes guys that are above 6 feet tall. They don't have any righties that are shorter than 6 feet. Okay, I'm 6'1", so that's good. So just starting to engage with the process more. So how do I do research? Well, there's so much information out there. So do that. And then as you get into senior year, you start to get closer to decision making. The question is, how do I make my decision? And I think the biggest trap is guys get carried away by stuff that doesn't really matter. Like, oh, I want this team because they have a sweet locker room and they're sponsored by Nike, and I get a Mizuno glove, which is great. And then they get there and they're sitting on the pine for 3 years and not playing, and they're, the freshmen's jumped them. And how's that glove contract now? Not that great. So look for a fit. Okay. Don't worry about what level, what's going to make you happy as a college baseball player and a college student, and then really focusing on that. So got a little off track with the questions.
No, that's great.
That's kind of the trajectory that I would say.
Yeah.
It always starts with the intangibles and ends with the intangibles, and focus on development. A lot of that other stuff will take care of itself.
That's good advice, man. People need to hear that. There's a lot of people that are searching for, like you said, they're not asking the right questions. They need to be asking the right questions. So I'm glad they get to hear that. Riley, tell me a little bit, when you're meeting with recruits, you're talking with parents, what's something that sticks out the most that they're unprepared for?
That they're unprepared for when they arrive on campus?
They're just unaware of. They're not quite ready for. It's kind of like a culture shock for them. Just something that seems to be a recurring thing in recruits that are coming to you.
I think one of the biggest things for young guys when they arrive on campus that I can speak to a little bit is the amount of freedom you have in college is really, really hard to replicate as a high school kid who's living with his parents. It's tough because when you you have your coaches that are there, and they're there to help you along the way, and obviously that's what we do. But you have a lot of freedom and a lot of decisions to make when you get to college. That what do you do with you're done with baseball practice at 4:30 and you go to weights till 5:30 to 6:30, and then what? What do you do after that? Because you're not going to bed till 10:30. That's 4 hours that you could be doing a lot of homework, or you could not be doing a lot of homework. So I think to answer your question, I think it's just being prepared for the time management it takes to really succeed in college. I think a lot of guys are a little bit behind in that aspect because they've never had to do it. Right or wrong, and they've never had to do their laundry every week. Some of them have, some guys have, but others haven't, and they don't know what that's like to budget their time that way.
Yeah, for sure. Connor, I want to ask you kind of a similar question. What's the biggest like culture shock for an incoming freshman? Something that you see that they have to deal with the most?
That they might not be an immediate impact guy. They come in and they're competing against, sometimes 22, 23. In our case, we had one guy, Devin Ortiz. Shout out to Devin Ortiz. He was 24.
Coach Devin. Coach Devin.
You know Devin?
Yeah. Great kid.
Devin Ortiz? Yeah. He's 24 years old and he's eligible for his 7th year. But I don't know if he's coming back.
Oh, geez.
But those 17, 18-year-old guys are competing against 24-year-old men, so they got to come in and really prove themselves early. And obviously the physical part, the lifting the weights, the practicing, some guys just can't handle it. And they got to shorten the learning curve and catch up.
For sure. So I'm joined by a great panel. I've got Ethan Gavon from keepplayingbaseball.org, Connor Sherba from D2 Rollins College in Orlando, Florida, and Riley Golding, assistant coach at St. Mary's College out in California. It's a great panel we got tonight talking about recruiting. I kind of just want to shift towards the end here, towards a little bit of a close. I want to tell a little bit of a story, and I think Craig can kind of hit on this as well. I kind of want to piggyback off of what you guys were just talking about. For me, I was soaking wet 145 pounds when I was a freshman in college. I had no idea. Like, it's never too late. Well, it was too late for me because college starts in 2 weeks. I gotta find a place to play. So I guess you're right though. It's never too late. But that was my experience. Craig's is similar. But for me, I was unprepared. I was not built to play college baseball. Connor, you said exactly the first thing that came into my mind. My first season was these guys are men. These guys are huge. And I'm used to playing against kids my own size that, yeah, some may be big, but this guy's got 4 years on me. He's a man, and I'm unprepared. And I think that was the biggest reality check for me, was that as good as I thought that I was, as prepared as I thought I was, I hadn't even scratched the surface. Like I wasn't even able to smell the scratch and sniff snicker. That's how little scratching I was doing. I was totally unprepared. And so I think that kind of led into where Craig and I are now with Prospect Dugout. We have a firsthand experience with being too late for college, walking onto a no-name school and having to fight our way onto a roster, into a starting lineup. I ended up playing 5 years professionally. Craig went 13 years professionally. Now he's coaching at the minor league level. So obviously, we talked about tonight that don't play yourself. Don't set yourself up to not go to a school. Don't set yourself up. I'm going D1. I'm looking at the D1 school when, number one, you can't make it there academically. Number two, they've got a ton of freshmen and sophomores. You ain't playing for 3 or 4 years. Do you want to sit the bench? Right. So I think what the moral of the story is be patient, be realistic, and make sure that when you're looking at colleges, number one, look at the college that is appropriate for you to play at. Number two, look at the college that's a good fit for you when it comes to the coaching staff and the players. And then number three, when you're approaching those colleges, be short and sweet with the content and the information that you give them. So that way they have a quick understanding of who you are.
Yeah, for sure. I think these guys, and it goes every step of the way. So as a freshman in high school, you're going to be a freshman in college. And then if you get a chance to go on to professional baseball, it's the same element. It's the same, like you're going to walk on campus as this wide-eyed 17, 18-year-old dude and go into a clubhouse with a 23-year-old grown man that's saying, "Hey, dude, welcome, but you ain't taking my job." And not being able to grasp that. And a little bit of that is like, you gotta experience it. But I think what we try to do is inform guys that, hey, like that's coming. So be prepared so that you don't just crumble, because it's going to happen. But being prepared and understanding what it takes, I'm going to piggyback on what Joel said, like being prepared of what it takes to play in college baseball is so much beyond high school. I remember the first day, it wasn't even practice. Like we had 5 a.m. This was
So
Connor,
dumb.
you'll know what I'm talking about, because Joel and I went to Southeastern University in Lakeland. So we had to be at Lake Hollingsworth, which is, we run right by Florida Southern at 5 a.m.
every Friday.
Well, I don't think I ever ran 3 miles of my life before doing that. So I'm 18, whatever, cool. 5 a.m. You guys run it. You got to run it in whatever, 21 minutes.
It was 20. Yeah, it was 21 minutes, 3 miles.
Something ridiculous. So I'm busting tail. The next day, I don't think I went to a class because I couldn't walk up the stairs to my dorm room because I just wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Like, and it was not just that, it was 5 a.m. practice, go back, shower, go to class, pay attention at the collegiate level, and then go to practice for 2.5 hours, and then wake up and do it all again the next day. And that kind of grind, you might think you're on some kind of high school grind, which is probably good, but it's nothing like college grind, because you're going to go work with dudes and work out with dudes that have 4 years or 5 years on you, and you're going to try to keep up. So if you're at high school junior or high school senior right now, like you're at top of the class. So like you're not keeping up with anybody. When you go to college, you're going to be playing catch up to all these dudes. So the effort level is so much more. It's, again, we can only relay that to you because some of you, it's going to hit you like a ton of bricks.
Mm-hmm.
But at least we did our part by saying, hey, this is coming. So just be prepared in your mind, because it kills guys here more than physically.
Mm-hmm.
Just be ready here that's coming.
Yeah. Craig, you remember how late Jesus was to that first run too? He was like 15 minutes late. He was in so much trouble.
And then, and what guys out there need to understand is, man, everybody gets it.
Woo. Yeah, we had to suffer for him being late. He didn't suffer. He got to watch us suffer for him being late. Anyway, everyone that's watching on Facebook, there's a lot of people tuning in on Facebook. Thank you guys so much for watching. We're not done just yet, but I do want to just make sure that you guys are following us on Instagram, Facebook, all the social media channels. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow night, Instagram Live, 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to do a little trivia with Coach Ballgame. He's a pretty cool little guy out there in Los Angeles. Funny guy, got some good trivia questions. Tuesday night, episode 2. Kicking it with your boy Swish, Nick Swisher, 12-year MLB vet, answers your questions. You get to call in live. You get to call in, ask your questions, sit there for 10, 15 minutes and talk with Nick, have a conversation. He loves doing it. He wants to do it. Tonight was a recruiting mastermind. Answer some of your questions that you guys submitted at prospectdugout.tv. It's been a great experience, a great time. Before we wrap up, I want to go through, I'm going to start with Riley, and then I'm going to hit over with Connor, and then Ethan, you can kind of wrap us up. I want you guys just to give us maybe a minute or two, take your time of your final thoughts of a word of encouragement, a word of advice, just something that you want to give. And I want you guys to talk to parents. I don't want you to talk to the athletes. I want you to talk to parents right now, because the parents are ultimately the ones that are making the decisions. So have a little conversation with them as we close. We'll start with you, Riley.
Yeah, I think it's parents allowing your sons, as they go through this process, to have some freedom within some structure as well. Obviously, you're their parents. You want to help them make a great decision. You want to, just like we do as coaches, we want to build them into young men, and you want to help in this decision process, but don't make it your process and don't make it your decision. Allow your son to have some freedom in what he wants to do. If maybe he wants to go across the country or something, and you don't feel so great about that, but it's a great opportunity. And, it's a great scholarship. It's a great coaching staff. It's a great fit. My advice would be to help without getting in the way, with for lack of a better term, if I can say it that way. And then also be as informed as you can with the process, with the NCAA clearinghouse. There's so much information out there with what you guys are doing at Prospect Dugout, and just a simple Google, that being informed with all that stuff, what it takes to get through the NCAA Eligibility Center, and what it means to get your grades high enough to you can get into these schools. And I think that's where parents can really help. And then also help with the patience side of it, with those young guys that have teammates that are committing as freshmen and sophomores, and they're starting to get anxious because they're in the summer going into their junior year. I think parents can play a huge role in kind of tampering that angst in those guys, and just letting them know it's going to be fine. There's plenty of time to get this thing figured out, and there's plenty of places to play around the country that would love to have that guy. Yeah, I don't know where it is, I don't know who it is, but they would love to have him on their team. And that's ultimately where you want to be. You want to be where you're going to get an opportunity to play, you're going to get a good education, you're going to be valued by the coaches that are there. And we talk about making a 40-year decision, not a 4-year decision, because ultimately the school you choose to go to is where you went. That's part of your life. It becomes part of you. You have friends forever. It becomes part of your life. It's not just 3 or 4 years at a school and you get some sweet gear and you move on. It's part of your life forever. So I think it's a big decision that parents should be a part of. I don't think parents should let their kids just fully make that decision on their own, but it should also be, the kid should have a lot to do with what's going on there.
For sure. I appreciate it. Awesome advice. Connor, before you jump in, I saw a comment on Facebook. Thoughts on what level, when essentially they're asking, when should a player focus on playing a single position? Hit on that and then jump into your final thoughts.
Like I mentioned earlier, I mean, a lot of colleges recruit in the middle of the field: catcher, shortstop, second base, center field. And it kind of depends. I think it depends on each team. It depends on the coach recruiting. And sometimes you're pigeonholed because, that might be the only position you can play. So I would have to say it depends on the player. I don't really have an exact answer for you. Okay. But to add on to the prior question, I would say for parents to be realistic, and not to think their kid is the greatest. And my son is 5 months old, and I always said that, I'm not going to be the parent that thinks he's the greatest. And then my son rolled over like a month ago, and I was like, man,
he's awesome.
He's awesome, man. He's really
got it going on.
And I caught myself saying it, which it can be hard at times. So my advice to the parents would be to watch college baseball. Take your son to go watch college baseball at every single level, because college baseball is really good. Whether it be NAIA, junior college, Division I, Division II, Division III, college baseball is really good. And see if their son can fit in at that level. I would say for the parents to push them academically, set them up to succeed, and then kind of let the rest happen. I think that their athletic ability will kind of speak for itself, and not to push it too hard.
Thanks, Connor. Riley Golding from St. Mary's College and Connor Sherba from Rollins College in Orlando, Florida. Ethan, why don't you go ahead and give us your final thoughts for today?
Only 2 minutes, right? No.
I'll give you 2.5 if you want.
No, I'm just kidding.
No more than that, though.
I think a really good analogy for the parents' role in the recruiting process is when a kid first gets his learner's permit, right? So hopefully you're not flipping the keys over and taking a nap. But hopefully you're also not reaching across and grabbing the wheel and doing all sorts of other stuff. So when we poll college coaches, it's like 100%. They want the kid to be the main person kind of driving this process, the main point of communication. But that doesn't mean that the parent should not be involved, right? So I like the drivers, getting your learner's permit, because there's a time and a place for parents to step in and be more active. Maybe it's a busy freeway. Hey, I want you to get in this lane, and we're just going to stay in this lane until things, whatever. There may even be a time where you have to say, hey, it's a little too dangerous for your level of driving. Why don't you pull over and I'll take the wheel. But from the outside of the car, so to the college coaches, to everyone else, it looks like your son's driving the car, right? And so there's a time and a place to be more involved and less involved, but he's got to be the one. This is his life, right? This is 40-year decision, lifelong decision. And so it's also an expensive decision. So would you let your kid make $100,000? And nowadays it's more than that, right? So $140,000 investment on their own, probably not, right? Probably don't have that level of trust. But it also depends on how well you know your kid, because your kid may be able to make that decision on his own and make the right one. So I think that's a good reference point. I want parents to know it doesn't have to be expensive. Okay, you don't have to break the bank. All our resources are free. We're a nonprofit. And if you're wondering about your role in the recruiting process, check out our parents page first. Okay, if you don't like it, we have no horse in the race. Okay, we're just trying to take information from college coaches, current and former college coaches and players, and pass that on to parents and recruits, so that they can navigate this process on their own and make informed decisions, educated decisions each step of the way. So it doesn't have to be expensive. Don't fall for the trap that you need to shell over a bunch of money. And then lastly, I think there's kind of 5 roles that we talk about. And I know I'm getting kind of long-winded, but it's kind of...
You're good, bro. You're good.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Academic counselor. Okay. I mentioned that. Be an academic counselor. So high school counselors, overworked, outnumbered. They're doing their best to make sure that those classes fit the eligibility criteria, but it never hurts to have a second set of eyes. So get on that early. Financial advisor, right? You don't want to leave college with a degree and just have so much college debt that you can't work, you can't build your life. So understand that college baseball is not a full ride sport, and that, what you're able to do. Source of knowledge. I think Riley touched on this. Be informed, right? This is important. There's no reason why you should know how to navigate this process if you haven't been through it already, but there's plenty of resources out there to help you navigate it. And it's really important that you're kind of like the bumper lanes for your kid as he's kind of pinging through this process, and you can keep him in that lane. Be a source of support. Okay. Teenagers, emotions up and down. Coach contacted me. Oh, this coach isn't interested. My dream school isn't looking for a catcher. I mean, it's crazy, right? So help your son stay even keel, help him focus on what he can control, which is working hard, being as good as he can, and being informed. And then be a good teammate. Just make sure you're a unified front, so that when you walk in on that campus visit, everything's kind of roles are clearly defined, and you guys are pulling on the rope at the same direction. So I could talk about this forever, so maybe it's a different show, but
that's why you got a website though, right?
Yeah. keepplayingbaseball.org. Free.
All of your thoughts right there.
Yeah. We've never charged a dime for any of our resources.
That's awesome.
That's our goal, to get players and parents informed. So check us out and let me know if you have any questions.
That's awesome. Tonight's Mastermind, Recruiting Mastermind, featured former D1 recruiting coordinator and founder of keepplayingbaseball.org, Ethan Gavin. And Gavon, sorry, I messed it up. I almost went the whole show without messing it up. Dang it.
All good.
Also, D1 assistant coach at St. Mary's College, Riley Golding. And finally, assistant coach at D2 Rollins College, Connor Sherba. Thank you guys so much for coming. We had a great time tonight answering these questions. The one thing that I really like about this format is that you guys are here on your own. You guys want to be here because you want to be here. You want to help out. You're not just coaching college baseball because you're making a living. You're coaching college baseball, or you're being a recruiting coordinator, giving out this information because you genuinely want to help people. And so we really appreciate you guys spending an hour out of your quarantine life to sit down and talk recruiting. So I appreciate you coming here and dropping that knowledge. Thank you guys. Thank you everyone for watching, for tuning in. Craig, do you have any final thoughts?
Yes. Catch a Cup of Coffee podcast tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Make sure you're tuning in. We haven't dropped that one on everybody. But no, guys, thanks for joining us. It was great knowledge. I hope everybody who is watching takes this information and utilizes it. It's one thing to hear this information that these guys are giving to you. These guys are in it. Like, these guys are in the middle of it. So take the advice and then utilize it. And I believe, and at Prospect Dugout, we believe every player in the country who wants to actually play college baseball, there is a program out there for you. You just have to be, just like these guys said, you have to be on top of your game, and you have to be realistic with your expectations. And there is an opportunity out there for you. So take what these guys have given you, the blueprint, and then utilize it, be realistic, and go get that college scholarship.
Well, for Craig Maddox and the Prospect Dugout Network, I'm Joel Hartman, and this was our recruiting mastermind. We'll see you guys later. Thanks for joining in.
Thanks, guys.